Thank you to my brother-in-law for buying me this cool little cigar kit for Christmas. It's got a lighter and a cutter and a few little cigars in here. It's very nice. Tonight we're drinking Johnny Walker Black, a little bit of scotch. So I assume that I named this video something like Broadheads and Why Mechanicals Suck. That would have been my clickbaity title. Do I think that all mechanical broadheads suck? No. But I do think you have to understand what you're getting when you're buying a mechanical pretty much across the board. Based on experience and based on tests that I've done, you are getting a broadhead that is structurally inferior to just a chunk of metal that's out front on most of the solid or fixed heads. And you are getting something that is going 100 miles an hour and has to create motion. It has to move in order to function properly while impacting something. So, can you hear that? I don't know if you can hear that in the background. It sounds like maybe I've got an owl that is missing its children. You hear that? If you can hear it, I apologize. Here's what I think overall. I think that you just have to know what you're getting into when you're shooting mechanicals. I think that there are two reasons that people will shoot mechanicals over fixed, and the first one is they fly like your field points. That's what the argument is. These fly like my field points. So I did some tests. Far away. Am I beautiful? So I've got Easton Axis 4mm match grades. I've got 125 grain iron will target tips on these. And then I've got the 125 grain iron will solid on the head of this. And right now these are hitting perfectly together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rest and I'm going to start moving it over to the right. And I just want to see what happens. I want to see how quickly before this starts to fall apart and if the field tips track with the actual broadhead. 40 yards with the arrows that are horribly out of tune. Not the arrows, the rest. I've moved my rest about 1/8 of an inch out. So as the arrow is leaving the bow, it's kicking out to the left because that's the way I'm moving the rest. Did I move it that way? Yeah, to the left. The fletchings are correcting and then the arrow is bending back around again. So what we're getting now from 40 yards are the arrows hitting still in a pretty reasonable group. Like this is probably 1.5 inches apart at 40. This is one of the reasons that I think a lot of people will go in their backyards and shoot 20 and 30 and it'll start to creep over and they think, I'm good to go, I'm tuned. Now let's get the broadhead out. I'm gonna shoot that same exact spot with a broadhead and we're gonna see the difference. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but the sirens have been going all morning long. There must be some chaos. Oh. Oh. Okay, that was really bad. So what ended up happening there with the broadhead at 40 was this thing, I could see it in the air, traveled left, came back to the right. See, I thought it was gonna just hit more to the left, but what it ended up doing was going through the mat on the right-hand side. I bet that sucker just sailed right through here. I'm gonna spend the rest of my morning digging for a $50 arrow. So what it literally did was the field tips were hitting here. That arrow just skipped off the side of the target right here and went straight through my mat over on this side. 40 yards. So if you're shooting at a deer, my rest is 1/8 of an inch out. That's 1/8. So now what I've got is a mechanical. I've got a Sevre 1.5 on the front end here. So ferrule's just a little bit shorter than their longer one, and I'm going to see if this will fly similar to the field tips or if we're running into the same problem. I'm hoping I don't send it through the mat as well, because that last arrow, I found it, but it's going to need some work. The Sevre heads have been interesting. The Matrix target is a little bit of a kind of heavier duty foam compared to like a block target. It's similar to the Reinhardt here. And I have bent these wings that the Sevres have. I've bent 3 of them, shooting them into the target. They make replacement blades, but I'm bending my blades, shooting into a target. Wonder how that does when it hits bone. So what we just saw there was the mechanical hit almost exactly where the field tips did. They are equally out of tune. The arrow is reacting the same way out the gate. Comes out of the bow, kicking this way, the exact same, whereas with a fixed head, that front steerage created by that more surface area is just pulling the arrow further off the path. So I get it. I get why you would shoot a mechanical from a flight perspective. But that doesn't change the fact that there's still a huge problem with your actual arrow flight. That would be a very frustrating experience for you to put on a fixed blade broadhead and for it to be hitting maybe kind of close at 20 and then weirdly off at 30 and then just a disaster at 40, especially if you're a backyard shooter and you're only practicing at 20 and 30 and then all of a sudden you get a shot on a deer that's maybe 36, 37 and it's hitting literally 18 inches apart at that distance. And then you saw where I shoot the mechanical and they're hitting together. But just like I described in the video, it doesn't matter. You're still not shooting an arrow that is in tune. So that the shaft drag that you're going to get on an arrow that is entering into an animal off kilter, that shaft drag of the impact where the knock end of the arrow is pulling away and you're getting all this tail whip, on top of the lack of penetration that you're already experiencing with a mechanical. And since we brought up penetration, let's do a little penetration test. Rage Hypodermic. Collared, which are super janky. Tip's going through, so right at under 10 pounds, the tip penetrates. This is insane. It's just under 40. Iron wheel solid, 125. So I'm going to do it similar to the edge. Start to push through. We're at 5 pounds, 4 pounds, 4 pounds, 5 pounds, 6 pounds, 8 pounds, 8 pounds. That's to get those bleeders through right there. £5, 10 pounds. I can feel it starting to penetrate. 10 pounds. Right over here on the side, Grim Reaper. I'll put it right over on the edge here. Tips through, 3 pounds. Now this is the part that's interesting. With almost I mean, that's a pretty fair amount of tension in this head. These blades are not opening at this point. So they're going to just shove straight through the skin this way. 20 pounds. 30 pounds. 35 pounds. 40 pounds. Wow. I'm going to have to 50 pounds. 60 pounds. 70 pounds. So at 70 pounds, it finally breaks through. That's fascinating. So that's what I wonder is it hitting an animal and doing the same kind of thing? I mean, look at that amount of give that's in this. It's not like it's a crazy amount. That's fairly tight. That means if it's looser, those are going to get even more stuck. I'm going to go right here. This can open left to right this way. So the point on this, which is a little bit thicker, took 15 pounds before it finally started to go. Blades are fully deployed. 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, 60 pounds. I'm literally going to have to reposition to get lower on this thing so that I can get enough leverage. And I've got my belly pushing on the... I mean, this is fascinating. The way these blades opened up, these little tabs are basically going to have to get pushed through this first. Ugh. 65 pounds. Penetrating at 5. £10. That was just shy of 10. Get those bleeders to go through. Valkyrie. That's 2 pounds. 4 pounds. That's insane. Didn't even get up to 4 pounds. Now, I know that this penetration test is not very scientific. I literally just stretched an old like cowhide rug over a top of a cylinder. And I tried to kind of emulate a little bit maybe the squishiness of a deer, this because there's a little bit of give in the body of a deer. Is it perfect? No, of course it's not perfect. But does it give you some insight into like the blade angles of a mechanical versus the blade angle of a lot of the fixed and solid heads? Yeah, it does. And some of them were super surprising, like especially the Sevre. The Sevre took almost 70 pounds of force for me to push it through this cowhide, because when it opens, those little tabs that are on the side, the tabs that open the broadhead are still making contact. So as I was going slowly through, I was having to basically just push. I mean, it's duller than the head of like a flathead screwdriver on both sides of the broadhead. Does that change when it's going 100 miles an hour? Maybe. But I think we've seen that it is inarguable that the penetration on a fixed head with a very quick taper with a very steep taper angle is significantly better than on a mechanical that has a very, very shallow taper. Ah, crap. So the other argument that I think would go against a fixed head is the blood trails. And here's the truth. It's about the accumulative blade or cutting surface that's on a broadhead. So the accumulative cutting surface on the Valkyrie heads that I'm shooting is this much, versus like the Swhacker, which is this much, versus the, I'll just run a bunch of statistics on the side of the screen here. This is the overall cutting surface. When your broadhead on a mechanical hits sideways, what does it do versus hitting vertical? Because you're not controlling that. You're not controlling that at all. So at a place where a vertical cut would, say, nick the artery that's underneath the spine, but a horizontal cut just sends you straight through no man's land, you're not controlling that. Whereas with something like the Valkyrie, where you've got 3 perfectly evenly spaced blades, what you're doing is just basically driving a big hole right through the middle of wherever you're hitting. So in some circumstances, the hole could be good or the hole could be bad. Blood trail is really going to depend on where you hit. If you hit high in the lungs, that cavity is going to fill up first, and you're not going to have a great blood trail with anything. I will agree, though, that a good hit on a mechanical versus a good hit on a solid or fixed, you're going to have better blood trails with the mechanical if it all works out. I think overall, I mean, I will still use mechanicals. I will. I'll for lighter game, whitetail. I've never had an issue with penetration. I've got a 75-pound draw, 30 inches. I could probably get a pass through with a field tip, you know. So because I've got that much velocity, that much momentum, and that much kinetic energy that's hitting the animal, I'm not going to really have a problem getting through the animal. But if you're a shorter draw, or if you're a lighter poundage, these are big questions that you have to ask. I watched a video of a young guy. He's got a real good personality. I don't know if he's making videos or not, but he used a Swhacker head. And he was a young guy, so I assume his draw was pretty light. And it didn't go well. He just buried it right in the shoulder on the deer, and the deer ran off, and the arrow fell out, and he got 0 penetration. And that's because the velocity that you have to have, the kinetic energy and the momentum that you have to get a mechanical to penetrate. And not just through the outer layer. You're going through skin, meat, bone, organs, bone, meat, and skin on the other side. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of work that these heads have to do as they're traveling through a body. I think that overall, this is just about you knowing what you're getting into with whatever you're shooting. And I think if you can shoot fixed heads, that should be the goal, is to get it to where you can shoot fixed heads, and then you can make the decision of, am I going to shoot a mechanical based on the knowledge of my setup? Because I know that my bow is really in tune. I know that I'm super set up, and I can actually, the knock is following the point, which is the goal, so that when it hits, you're not having that loss of speed. You're not making the arrow that's going through the air like this, trying to catch up, creating a bunch of that tail whip as it's traveling through the animal. Just all those things that inhibit penetration. So I know I'm probably going to make some people mad because they're big Rage fans, or people that love Swhacker, or people that love Grim Reaper. All of those heads, there are tons and tons of people that kill stuff every single year with them. And there are tons and tons of people who have issues with those heads every single year. So just understand what you're getting into. Understand that a mechanical head is structurally inferior to a solid head. I think the overall point is figure out what it's going to take for you to get your bow in tune where you can shoot a fixed blade broadhead, and then I think you've got a lot of options for yourself. Happy New Year. Let's hope 2021 was as good as 2020 was.